marching, y'all. And I know y'all think it's right, but we can't. They not think we've been marching for damn near 100 years.
We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization and organization because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us. Mobilization is very easy. Very, very easy. Because since we're people who are instinctively ready to respond against acts of injustice, anytime there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She'll get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood.
A lot of us are overwhelmed, pissed, and scared. I don't want to wait till the next election. I don't want to just write my congressperson and hope that they'll do the right thing. I don't want to just post things to the vacuum of social media. I don't want to just make statements about things. I want to change how things are. There are a zillion things we can do, and people are coming up with new ones all the time.
Hey everybody, long time no see. I recently watched, laughed, and cried to this video about Ehlers Danlos Syndrome called EDS and Why We Misunderstand Disability by Ponderful that I loved so thoroughly, and I highly recommend a watch if you are interested in learning about EDS and invisible illnesses in general. During my time on short-term disability, I haven't done much outside of trying to heal and recover my body. Lots of laying down, lots of crying, to be totally honest. I haven't had much inspiration to create a YouTube video for a while and was working on smaller things like video art and DJing for Palestinian solidarity, which I'm putting on my SoundCloud. I appreciate everyone who's been engaging in those things, even though they aren't what you're used to on here. In lieu of creating, however, I've stumbled deeper into some TikTok wormholes, from Risa Tisa, which is a whole nother thing, to the coffee revolution debacle that has been currently taking up too much space on leftist TikTok. I made a short video about mutual aid. I just made a 10-minute long impassioned video about mutual aid and how to get started, and TikTok just ate it. So this is me trying to start again. And the criticism of the coffee revolution on TikTok, but as per usual, it received no traction. That app is anti-black. Also, that could be another video. I still think that this is an important video to do though, and have had a couple requests to make this Mutual 101 video since I started this channel. So I wanted to spend today talking about mutual aid, what it does, what it can't do, and how you can find your place in it. As an overview of the situation, Coffee Revolution was proposed by two activists as a way to get people involved in their local communities. To clarify, it was never meant as a means to be an organization. Like, we weren't about to be the Coffee Revolution Brigade with patches and pins. But it was meant to be used as a social club or a way to meet like-minded people and expand individually from there on your own. But of course, in true TikTok fashion, this innocent idea got dogpiled and ripped apart for being unsafe, not radical enough, and quickly became a Fed operation and suspect to folks online who, as far as I know, have little to no organizing experience whatsoever. And as a disgruntled millennial, I gotta be honest, it pissed me off. How a coffee with a stranger became the next COINTELPRO in people's minds, I will never know, but I promise I will address safety concerns and mutual aid later. But based on that volatile reaction, it seems like so-called leftists online don't know or practice mutual aid at all. And as an anarchist, no shade, but it shows.
Even if you get mad, even if you get offended, so what you gonna do? Because I guarantee you can't beat me up.
Let's get clear on what it actually is. Mutual aid is a concept and practice rooted in community support, solidarity, and cooperation. It's based on the idea that individuals and groups can come together to meet each other's needs and address issues collectively without relying on traditional structures or government intervention.
Being political isn't just about watching the news and voting. It includes being part of your community. One major application of praxis is mutual aid. the practice of understanding and involving yourself in the well-being of your peers.
Mutual aid is based on voluntary participation. People contribute their time, resources, skills, and knowledge to support each other without expecting direct financial compensation. It is for the people, by the people, and with the people in mind. Because of this, it is considered solidarity and not charity.
Mutual aid differs from charity by focusing on the direct action of members who are involved in decision-making, volunteering while providing solidarity and humanity to those in need. Aid can range from providing childcare, food, PPE, transportation, financial assistance, and even emotional support. Charity work is often more selective in who they target for assistance and can be incentivized by tax reimbursement.
So for example, your local food bank is not mutual aid because it is both dependent on hierarchies and requires government intervention. Mutual aid is founded on principles of solidarity and equality. It recognizes that everyone has something to contribute, no matter how small, and that everyone's needs are valid and deserving of support. Regardless of your abilities and means, you have a place in the struggle to help.
You find oppressed people. Sooner or later, they rise up against the oppressor. When the Jews were being brutalized in Poland, there came a time when they couldn't take it anymore, and they fought back. They didn't have too much to fight with, but they fought back. And I think every oppressed people, no matter how meek and humble they are, after you drive them so far, they're going to strike back.
Mutual aid projects are often organized horizontally, meaning decision processes are decentralized and participatory. This makes them inherently Marxist and anarchist because it is solely influenced by the will of the people.
If there's a line to get on a crowded bus, do you wait your turn and refrain from elbowing your way past others even in the absence of police? If you answered yes, then you are used to acting like an anarchist. The most basic anarchist principle is self-organization. The assumption that human beings do not need to be threatened with prosecution in order to be able to come to a reasonable understanding with each other.
Mutual aid seeks to empower communities to address their own needs and challenges instead of waiting like we are taught to. Rather than relying on external sources for help, mutual aid encourages self-reliance and resilience. We are our own heroes.
That they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said, with the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people. I'm not the pig.
Instead of relying on the government, a food bank, or a charity, the community takes it upon themselves to pool their resources together and address everyone's needs as they arise.
In a perverse bit of irony, the US, a nation that likes to tout its strong Christian foundation, has adopted a vision of social Darwinism that is completely detached from reality. We hear the term survival of the fittest a lot, especially in regards to the market. Only the hardest workers will succeed, and everyone else will fail due to a supposed lack of morality or strength of will. Of course, this vision of survival of the fittest is not representative of how it works in real life. In the animal kingdom, including humans up until very recently, unity and solidarity with other members of your species was the only way to ensure survival. Not of the individual animal, but of the species as a whole. Survival was a team effort, each doing their part for the strength and betterment of the group. It's only since the development of global capitalism that we humans have decided to treat each other as enemies to be defeated rather than brothers and sisters. If we follow hyper-individualist thinking to its logical conclusion, we get a very dire image of the world to come.
Mutual aid can take many forms, depending on the needs and resources of the community. It might involve food distribution, childcare, housing support, healthcare, disaster relief, education, or any other area where people can come together and support each other. It literally can be anything you want it to be. The most recent example that I love and support are mass blocks and drives. Programs like Project N95 are a successful example of a new form of mutual aid that started at the beginning of the pandemic. People need masks. Masks are expensive. Why not give out free masks? In 2024, it is depressing to see how a lot of those initiatives have ended and fizzled out because the organizers no longer needed them personally. Of course, this isn't the case for all organizations, but the spike and plummet of community fridges, mutual aid funding shows that to be true. It is not about putting a band-aid on a situation, but actually treating it by speaking to and with the people who need it the most.
They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action, not to revolutionary action. We must know clearly the difference between mobilization and organization. One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal.
When you listen to the folks in your community, a lot of the answers people have in relation to what to do for mutual aid will go away. People will tell you what they need. It is up to us to listen. Mutual aid emphasizes solidarity and mutual support rather than one-way acts of charity from those who have more to those who have less. It is not about looking down on your community members, approaching them like you are helping them, or feeling guilt about taking from the mutual aid network. It is for you also, regardless of your background.
Something really important about all this is that mutual aid is not charity. Charity is where rich people and institutions give tiny crumbs to poor people to make themselves look better. Usually there are a lot of strings attached to what they give, like giving only to mothers, or only to children, only to sober people, or only to people of faith. Charity rides on the idea that rich people or social workers should decide who is a deserving poor and who is the undeserving poor, and that rich people can put conditions on the housing or food or cash they give poor people. Charity blames poor people for poverty. Mutual aid blames the system for making people poor and says everyone deserves everything they need.
Take what you need, leave what you can is a common phrase at community fridges and should be applied to all mutual aid networks. Mutual aid respects the dignity and the autonomy of individuals and communities. It recognizes that everyone has inherent worth and deserves to be treated with respect. Anyone can join and everyone should be able to join. And what I mean by that is, objectively, folks with differences in backgrounds, values, and understanding should be welcome to participate. We weren't all born Marxists and radical, and someone radicalized us. Allowing people to grow and evolve in these spaces at the level that they are at will help them in their journeys moving forward as activists. I first got involved in mutual aid and activism while I was still unlearning evangelical Christianity, more specifically Pentecostal. Michael, who I love and still keep in touch with at times, was a Gen X queer man who had so much patience and understanding with me as an 18-year-old who was repeating things I learned in the church and thought was right. Remember where you came from and give people the same grace. Mutual aid initiatives should strive to be accessible and inclusive to all members of the community, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, ability, immigration status, or other factors. Remember that if the most marginalized in your community and movement cannot access the mutual aid, then it is not mutual aid. For instance, during the pandemic, some community fridges had grocery drives for those who couldn't get to the community fridges or do a pickup themselves, like the disabled or the elderly. Always ask the folks with different challenges than you what may help them. Mutual aid efforts should aim for sustainability, both in terms of environmental impact and long-term viability. This might involve building networks of support, sharing resources efficiently, and considering the broader social and ecological context. I keep mentioning free fridges, but a good example of this would be food not bombs.
We want to change the system. That's why we do this action. Yeah. Lots of people think this is real because they always think punk are alcoholic or junkies. We always singing and we always complain. The system, complain is very easy for everyone, but I is doing something more than complain something.
Hi, I'm Keith, and I'm one of the 8 original people that started Food Not Bombs. Food Not Bombs collects produce and bread and food that can't be sold from grocery stores, bakeries, produce markets and things like that, and we make free vegan and vegetarian meals that we serve on the streets in 1,000 cities of the world. We're not a charity, and then some chapters have started going that solidarity, not charity, as one of their banners and stuff, and that's because it's really the best possible solution is not to have endless soup lines forever, but to end the reason why people are forced to go to soup lines. We have like a two concept thing where one, we're protesting and organizing against capitalism and exploitation and all this stuff that's happening. We were trying to show connection from the very beginning, that animal rights, your diet, how you grow food, being organic, abundance and sharing instead of hoarding and scarcity. All these concepts are all linked together. And then our principles were very simple, the three principles, that the food is always vegan and vegetarian and free to anyone without restriction, that each chapter is autonomous and has no leaders, and everybody works equally using a process called consensus to make decisions, and that we're dedicated to nonviolent direct action. So because of that, it makes it very easy for anybody to do, and they don't need to get permission or some licensing fee or some crazy thing.
Since Food Not Bombs is anarchist, they promote utilizing resources outside of traditional ways to help run their operations. Reaching out to local markets and grocery stores, for instance, to accept the produce that they're going to toss out to feed communities is one example. Joining mutual aid networks near you typically involves reaching out to existing groups or organizations that are engaged in mutual aid activities in your community. I've seen too many comments on social media that were already defeatist in finding organizers in your area, so I'm creating this video so there is no confusion on how simple it can truly be. Start with online research to identify mutual aid groups, collectives, or organizations in your local area. You can use search engines, social media platforms, and community forums to look for relevant information. Examples of things you can search could be Feminist Bookstore, Boston; Food Not Bombs, Boston; Community Organizing, Boston; Harm Reduction, Boston. Whatever you're looking to get help with, or to help with, search it with your city or your closest metro area. Check social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and community-specific platforms for mutual aid groups in your area. Many groups use social media to connect with community members and share information about their activities, events, and needs. Look for postings on community bulletin boards in local newspapers or on community websites that may advertise mutual aid initiatives or events happening in your area. A good place to search is in the artsy coffee shop or bookstore in your town, the health food store or the food co-ops, places where college kids and students gather, art stores, as well as creative communities, and even the local library. Visiting community centers, libraries, or other public spaces where community events and gatherings where creatives and artists are held usually are open and willing to allow some form of activism to take place there. These places often serve as hubs for mutual aid activities and may have information about groups operating in your neighborhoods. Check out those bulletin boards. If you can't find anything, keep these places in mind when you start your own and need somewhere to flyer or somewhere to organize. Keep an eye out for events, meetings, or workshops organized by mutual aid groups in your community. Attending these gatherings can help you learn more about their work, meet other members, and get involved in ongoing initiatives. Those who have been organizing for a while will have intro meetings and training set up for you to join. If you're unable to find any info online or through community channels, consider reaching out directly to local community organizers, activists, or advocacy groups to inquire about mutual aid networks in your area. They may be able to provide you with contacts or information about existing groups. Is there an activist you look up to on social media that's in your area? Go to the events they promote. Message them about asking for help on where to start. A lot of people are more nice and open and willing than you think. A lot of this is about people just being brave enough to try, which I promise to also address deeper a little later down the line. Once you've identified a mutual aid network or group that you're interested in joining, reach out to them to express your interest, learn more about their activities and projects, and find out how you can contribute or get involved. Remember that mutual aid is based on principles of solidarity and cooperation, so don't hesitate to reach out and connect with others who share your commitment to supporting your community. Maybe start with testing out a few groups and seeing where you fit in best. You may find that you fit in well with them and can help in the ways that you can. You may also find that there aren't any groups in your area, or that you don't jive well with those who are organizing, which I promise will happen to you more than once. So don't feel bad about it. If you can't find a mutual aid network in your area, consider starting one yourself. You can begin by reaching out to friends, neighbors, or colleagues who may be interested in collaborating on mutual aid initiatives to address community needs. It can be as simple as this. You and your neighbors are all struggling to pay for meals, and you decide to do a community meal on Sundays to help reduce costs for folks by pooling resources together. Or as big as wanting to mobilize your city to provide free clinics. The sky is truly the limit. Starting your own mutual aid project can be a fulfilling way to support your community and address shared needs. This is for the folks who are tired, are sitting around and waiting for permission or for someone to save them.
Faroud Amiel joined the community fridge movement when he and a group of volunteers launched a fridge in December 2020.
I'm the director of mutual aid for Southside Action Pack, but I just go like Fridge Boy. That's what they call me on the Rudy Avenue. They're like, Fridge Boy, come over here. And I'm like, I'm coming, I'm here.
Faroud found a spot for the fridge in front of the shop of his longtime barber and friend.
Dave cuts my hair. He's been cutting my hair for like 10 years. And I was like, Dave, I really want to start up a fridge concept in front of your shop. It's about mutual aid, and we talked about it, and he was like, put it up, let's give it a shot.
And then explain to everyone, like, what is mutual aid?
Mutual aid, it's folks on the same peripheral level, just helping each other out, community helping out community.
Step one would be to start by identifying the specific needs and challenges in your community. Food insecurity, housing issues, healthcare access, childcare, elder care, mental health support, transportation, harm reduction, or any other pressing concerns that community members may be facing. What is the most pressing issue and how can I help?
Direct action is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot when describing anarchist tactics. And rightly so, since it's one of the main ways anarchists put our values of autonomy, self-organization, and mutual aid into practice. So, what is it exactly? Well, a simple definition would be to say that direct action is a political action aimed at achieving a specific goal or objective, in which is carried out directly by an individual or group of people without appealing to a higher authority for legitimacy. Now, this broad definition covers a huge range of activities, everything from banner drops to prison breaks, and it doesn't necessarily tell us much about the politics of those carrying out the action itself. Direct actions are tactics, meaning that they are a specific type of action that can be used to implement a wide variety of strategies. While you don't have to be an anarchist in order to carry out or to participate in a direct action, the concept itself holds a special importance for anarchists and other anti-authoritarian radicals. And that's because well-timed and well-executed direct actions can offer an escape from the endless cycle of representational politics, which assumes its highest form in the state.
Step two would be to community build. Who can I help? Who can help me? How can we help each other?
Just trying to give us a little bulk of a few eggs and a few other things is not enough for all the survivor programs. Free clothing, free shoe program, free medical clinic, free breakfast children program, the Intercommunal Institute and Liberation Schools, free legal aid education for the community. This is very, very important. All of these programs, and we have a list of them. We have 12 free ambulance service. We produce the free medical clinic and the Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation. We start talking about asking them to donate what they want to. We give no specific demand. $2, $3, $5, $10 a week. No, we're not hurting them, and they know it. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to get out of supporting that black community continuously every week for the year as long as the black community institution exists in the community. That black community institutions must be united with the community. Yet we know the black community, the black community and the black businessman are victims of the big monopoly capitalists.
Step 3. Clearly identify and define the goals and scope of your mutual aid project. What is our goal? How are we achieving it? How far do we want to go?
Your principles aren't principles until they cost you something. If your principles happen to always work out in your favor every single time, then they're not principles. You're just finding ways to rationalize what's in your self-interest. So the real test for whether or not you're true to your principles is exactly the point at which it becomes something that you have to sacrifice something for. That's the point at which they move away from being simply the way you operate in the world into being genuine constraints on your conduct.
Step 4. Form a core group of committed individuals who share your vision and are willing to dedicate time and effort to the project. Who can dedicate time to organize with me?
I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that question. My suggestion would be to think creatively, to come up with strategies that help to build community. We have an enormous challenge facing us, and that is we do not necessarily know how to imagine ourselves as members of communities that are larger than our immediate reach. And as I often say, as I think back on that era of the 60s, which is supposed to be like the radical era, I mean, that's what many of you think. I mean, there were a lot of things that were very radical, but there were serious problems about that period as well, and I don't want you to ignore that. But what the most important aspect of that time, as I think back on many decades, was the ability we developed to imagine ourselves as members of far-flung communities, so that we could, in struggling against the war in Vietnam, it was not just objectifying people in Vietnam, but it was feeling a sense of solidarity and a sense of togetherness and an emotional connection with people, an ability to imagine them as subjects and not objects of our activism. And I think that is what we need more than anything.
Step 5. Develop a detailed plan outlining the structure, activities, and timeline of your mutual aid project. How can we standardize this for accessibility and understanding?
What are we doing daily? Like I said before, we are organizing the community, going into different people's homes, politically educating them, telling them exactly what is going on, not only here in Oakland, but in America and throughout the world. See, many black people are not aware of what is going on in America, or what is going on in South Africa, or over there in France, for instance. We organize, since the black community is not a reading community, we talk to them, show them examples. In our paper, we have pictures, so they can see what is going on. And then after they learn what is going on in the black community, then they can step forth and try to change themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Step 6. Establish values and principles that will guide your mutual aid project. What do we stand for? How do we hold each other accountable?
Anti-fascism, broadly speaking, goes back as far as fascism. Groups like the Arditi del Popolo, which oppose Mussolini's fascists, to groups like Anti-Fascist Action, which fought Hitler's Nazis in Germany, and many other anti-fascist forces in Europe and around the world.
Throughout World War II, fascists were pretty easy to spot. That became a little harder once they'd stopped wearing their brown shirts.
Many former fascists adjusted the language they used to describe their politics, adjusted the way they presented it, tried to sort of leech off of left-wing politics to make themselves more appealing. Anti-fascism, or Antifa, became this militant kind of rebirth of anti-fascism that refused to trust in the state or the government to stop the far right, and believed in pushing them out of public spaces from below, in football stadiums, in punk venues, in communities. The anti-fascist argument is that you don't let fascism grow in any kinds of public or cultural spaces. And so these battles have been going on in these venues for decades.
Step 7. Set up channels for communication and coordination, such as email lists, social media groups, messaging apps, or online forums. How do we communicate? How often?
Direct action can also be used to set up networks of mutual aid. 50 years ago, the Black Panthers were faced with the reality of widespread poverty and lack of service provision in their communities. Rather than appealing to the government or the conscience of white America, the Panthers set to work organizing their own health clinics and breakfast programs for hungry school children. These programs were part of a broader strategy of building community power and were identified by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover as a primary threat to national security, by which he meant a threat to the legitimacy of the state and the white supremacist power structure that upholds it. Because they transgress the official channels of politics and often the law itself, direct action campaigns are inevitably met with a whole toolbox of tactics aimed at bringing conflicts back under state control. These can range from state and corporate-funded nonprofits infiltrating and co-opting grassroots movements in order to force a change in tactics or leadership, all the way up to extreme repression such as mass incarceration and targeted assassinations carried out by state and paramilitary forces.
Step 8. Consider fundraising and resource mobilization strategies to secure the financial and material resources needed to support your mutual aid activities. How will we keep running?
In his work, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution, Kropotkin writes, "In the long run, the practice of solidarity proves much more advantageous to the species than the development of individuals endowed with predatory inclinations. This should be common sense. If you have a pride of lions, and one of them is the best hunter, capable of securing enough food for the whole pride, which would be more beneficial to the survival of the group? That lion hoarding their food and allowing the others to go hungry, or sharing their food because there's plenty to go around? A starving lion is no good to the pride. It will be weak and helpless. A lion with enough to eat can contribute. Now imagine a vastly more intelligent species, with the capacity to produce huge quantities of food on demand, with networks of highways, railways, shipping lanes, and giant metal contraptions that can fly supplies anywhere in the world. That species has all the tools for every member of the species to flourish. Of course, we also have a desire for profit. The profit motive is the roadblock that prevents the hungry from getting enough to eat, the homeless from getting a roof over their head, the sick from getting the treatment they need. Every day, grocery stores throw out literal tons of perfectly good food which could be distributed to those in need. Recently, a young person working at a donut shop was fired for handing out to homeless people and firefighters the donuts that were slated to be thrown away. During the recent winter storm, police were stationed at dumpsters to prevent desperate people from getting some much-needed food. Here's the problem. The profit motive, the thing which makes all of these heinous practices inevitable, is not going away anytime soon. We cannot count on grocery stores or their wealthy owners to consider the good of the group. That's where the practices of direct action and mutual aid come in. Let's take a moment to define those terms. Direct action is exactly what it sounds like. Doing things directly with the explicit purpose of improving the material conditions of those around you. This often includes going on strike or staging sit-ins or protests, things to bring attention to a problem. When used in relationship to mutual aid, the act of helping others and building strong interpersonal connections, direct action could mean establishing a community fridge or free store, a place where people who need help could come and take the food they need. It could mean finding places for people to stay when their power goes out during a winter storm. At its core, mutual aid is the practice of helping others in any way you can, fully cognizant of the fact that one day you may need help, and that hopefully the community you helped build will be there to help you.
Once you have a plan in place, launch your mutual aid project and start implementing your activities. Be flexible and open to feedback from participants, and be prepared to iterate and adapt your approach based on changing needs and circumstances. Regularly evaluate your progress against your goals and objectives, and use this information to inform future decision making and planning. By working collaboratively and leveraging collective resources and strengths, you can make a meaningful difference in the lives of those around you through mutual aid. You can do all of this and a ton more. It's literally just based on your imagination.
We come to tell you that when you come to serve a people, you must know as much as you can. The more you know, the better able you are to serve the people.
By working collaboratively and building solidarity within your community, you can create meaningful and sustainable solutions to address shared challenges and support the well-being of all of the members. Another sentiment I keep seeing is that these things haven't been done before. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted for over a year, and the reason it was successful is because they were able to rely on themselves and their community outside of the buses.
They walked instead. They rode in cars, their own cars, instead of anyone who would give them a lift. The buses waited still and lonely in their silent rows, or rode empty through the streets. They were threatened and intimidated, arrested, convicted, and fined, and still they walked. In the rain and the sun and the dark of night, they walked with God and shunned the buses. They walked with God and they rode with God too, for they formed a carpool that was a marvel of quick organization. A network of cars, old and new, of trucks and taxis, reached out across the city and carried people where they wanted to go. It started as a one-day protest, nothing more.
They supported each other through the boycott, which is how the boycott lasted. Anarchist and socialist movements have a rich history of mutual aid, often emphasizing principles of solidarity, collective action, and community empowerment, and I want to talk about a few. During the Spanish Civil War, anarchist and socialist organizations in Spain organized large-scale mutual aid networks to support communities affected by the conflict. They established collectives for agriculture, industry, and services, where resources were pooled and distributed according to need. These collectives provided food, healthcare, and education, and other essential services to millions of people across Catalonia, Aragon, and other regions controlled by anarchist and socialist groups.
The anarchists had no doubt about their main objective, to defeat fascism. But for them, their campaign was not just against the army rebels, but against capitalism itself. While the columns surged out to defeat the enemy, committees of workers in the town struggled to construct a new order out of the confusion.
At that time, it seemed impossible to solve those initial difficulties, but looking back, people really showed a lot of common sense. Everything was improvised. You could call it a miracle. Despite the religious meaning of the word, it was a miracle achieved by the ordinary people.
As the chaos subsided, this new revolutionary society began to function. Much of the Catalan economy was now being run by the workers themselves. In Barcelona, trams and cinemas, factories, department stores, and even greyhound tracks were run by their own employees. The trade unions saw to food supplies. Union lorries drove out to the villages with goods to exchange for food. Barter, not purchasing, kept Barcelona fed for the first weeks of the Civil War. In some places, money itself, seen by anarchists as inherently evil, was abolished. Shopping was done with vouchers, issued by local committees.
In the United States during the 1960s and the 70s, the Black Panther Party launched a free breakfast program for children as a part of their broader community-based initiatives. The program provided free breakfasts to thousands of children in predominantly Black communities, addressing food insecurity and advocating for community empowerment and self-determination.
The Black Panthers are one of the most misunderstood civil rights groups in American history. Started in 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale as a way to protect Black communities against police brutality, the Panthers are often depicted as a violent organization, but many of their contributions to the communities they served, especially in terms of healthcare, are left out of history textbooks.
I think the dominant message from almost every textbook I've seen is putting the Panthers in what civil rights scholars have called the declension narrative, which is basically this idea that once the Black Power movement starts, but really after King's death in 1968, the civil rights movement declines, and you get these Black radicals who are just demanding too much and nonsensically turning to violent tactics. I don't think I've seen a single textbook that mentions the 100 or so social programs that the Black Panthers ran.
They're anti-capitalists, they're socialists, and they work with all poor people. In fact, they saw themselves as continuing Martin Luther King's work. People forget when King was assassinated, he was leading what he called the Poor People's Campaign. King advocated as a democratic socialist against what he called the exploitative tenets of materialism and capitalism.
And the goal of the Black Panther Party was to expose the problems in the society and then show that they weren't static, that they didn't have to be that way, but that there were ways in which to make those changes that were necessary.
In that area where you have a high infant mortality rate, where you have
lead poisoning, where you have inadequate medical service. We saw the basic need for free medical service, and we worked hard and worked over long periods of time in order to make that a reality. Now, up to this day in the black community, you have doctors there who are more concerned with private wealth rather than public health. The concept behind the medical center is that we would take the profit out of the medical profession. Our medical center is a direct result of the basic need in the black community for a free medical service.
Well, all these groceries, way over 6,000 bags of groceries, being given away free. Tomorrow night, the Black Panther Party has organized the whole conference, and tomorrow night at the Oakland Auditorium, that's Wednesday tomorrow night at 6 p.m., we expect way over 6,000 people to come down and get their free bags of groceries, and also to register to vote, to unify the vote around the very concrete program, so that in the future the black community and other poor oppressed people in any kind of vote will be unified around concrete survival programs like this, so that people won't be asked by the politicians to endorse them, but the politicians will have to endorse people's community survival program, such as free food, because people got to eat every day.
This is a new approach for the Black Panther Party, isn't it?
It's not per se a new approach. It's some new kind of work. It's all related to our original vision of the Black Panther Party over 6 years ago. You see, the Black Panther Party organizing this kind of operation really shows that we're implementing the original vision of the Black Panther Party.
The IWW is a radical labor union that has advocated for worker solidarity and direct action since its founding in 1905. The IWW has organized mutual aid initiatives such as strike funds, legal aid, and health care support for workers engaged in labor struggles and industrial disputes.
We all face the day-to-day hassles with the boss. Firings, speed up, general harassment, and intimidation. Over the years, different ways have developed to dealing with these hassles. Unorganized workers simply endure or quit. The AFL-CIO, CLC officials and those of other business unions hoard up big strike funds and depend on the step grievance procedure, whereby a dispute goes through a series of conferences and ends up being decided by an arbitrator, usually a lawyer or professor. Trouble is, enduring leaves things just as they are. Quit, and the next job, if you can find one, is likely to be just as bad. Business union tactics, though better than nothing, leave a lot to be desired too. A big treasury makes a union much more vulnerable to court injunctions. Stop picketing, stop boycotting, stop striking, maybe someday stop breathing, and the fines that go with them. Also, the money tends to get used for other things besides strikes. For example, the railroad unions for many years owned a number of non-union, low-wage, death-trap coal mines. George Meany, head of the AFL-CIO, is part owner of a non-union sweatshop baseball factory in the Dominican Republic. The step grievance procedure is clumsy and slow, and the well-off professionals who serve as arbitrators have more in common with the boss than with us, so that it generally takes 6 months to a year to lose most of the grievances. There is another way to take care of business. It's called mass grievance or direct action, which means that we use our power to stop or mess up the job we're working at to settle any gripes we have our way.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy in 2012, anarchist and socialist organizers, along with other activists, mobilized grassroots relief efforts under the banner Occupy Sandy. They provided emergency assistance, distributed supplies, organized volunteer teams, and offered medical care and support to communities devastated by the storm, highlighting the importance of mutual aid and disaster response.
The scene at this Brooklyn church is controlled chaos. Scores of people sorting and distributing tons of aid for relief centers in the hardest hit parts of New York. Everyone is a volunteer. and all seem to be working at top speed. It's part of a citywide effort dubbed Occupy Sandy. What began as the political protest movement, Occupy Wall Street, has morphed into ongoing community neighborhood organizing.
This is exactly what Occupy has been doing all along.
Occupy Sandy site coordinator Pablo Benson.
It's funny because we've been hearing a lot of reports about how Occupy has been dead. And even throughout this period, Occupy has been actively engaging in community organizing. It's no coincidence that as soon as this disaster came out, Occupy was ready to handle the flow of donations of volunteers and try to effectively direct them to where their work would be most purposeful.
These examples demonstrate how anarchist and socialist movements have applied principles of mutual aid to address social inequalities, build community resilience, and challenge oppressive systems through direct action, solidarity, and collective organizing. While mutual aid and community organizing are powerful tools for social change and collective empowerment, they also can face challenges and limitations. And like I mentioned previously, I like to address the downsides to mutual aid. And some of the folks who are expressing concern had some valid commentary. Mutual aid can have inequitable access. Some community members may face barriers to participation in mutual aid initiatives and community organizing efforts due to factors such as language barriers, socioeconomic status, disability, immigration status, or discrimination. Addressing these barriers requires intentional efforts to ensure inclusivity and accessibility for all members of the community.
Historically speaking, organizations and institutions have shown us that they want to identify with one thing and build power around that, build influence and access. And I get it, right? So this idea that you have disability rights, you have women's rights, you have LGBTQ rights, and those kind of different pockets are really building a strong narrative. But the thing that I find to be harmful is when we're not building in coalition. Because the reality is that you have people like myself who are Black, disabled, and women, and so many other things. And when you live at the intersections of all three of those, then you can't split your political and social dynamics between these different groups. It doesn't produce real results of freedom, and it doesn't produce real results of access to employment and other opportunities that you're looking for. I'll give one example on this. So the Black Lives Matter movement. When it was created in conjunction mostly with a lot of young folks. What was unique about this particular movement was the intersectional philosophy that was built upon. The folks getting up and saying, we are not just fighting for one narrative, but we are specifically fighting for folks who are on the margins. We are fighting for Black folks who are also LGBTQ, who are women, who are femme, who are trans, who are disabled. They named it. They saw like their people across the country and said, I'm fighting for all of you, not just some of you.
Mutual aid can have power dynamics. Mutual aid and community organizing can sometimes replicate existing power dynamics within society, leading to the marginalization of certain voices or groups within the community. It is essential to be mindful of power dynamic and work to create spaces that prioritize the voices and leadership of those who are impacted by social justice.
Whenever you have a situation and you have your foot on somebody's neck, and maybe not even directly you, but you're born into a situation, into a class of people who have, their foot on somebody's neck, metaphorically. You have to justify this. You have to justify it somehow. You have to somehow clean yourself and make yourself innocent. And so one can go back to, say, the onset of the Civil War, or go back further than that. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, in that famous quote where, when he tried to explain what it was like to be in the South and to have slavery play such a big role, he said, it's like we have the wolf by the ear. We're threatened, not the wolf, which is the slaves, right? Not the slaves, we are threatened. When folks go to war, South launches the war, against the North, the first thing they say, unless they want to reduce us to slavery. They want to reduce us to, this is the justification, they want to reduce us to slavery by taking away our right to enslave you.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's an entire, justifying portion of this. And I suspect that this actually extends, beyond Black people into any time, you're dealing with a power dynamic. I'm not, I don't have a ton of research on the Holocaust, but I strongly suspect that Hitler was somehow fashioning, the German people had somehow actually oppressed themselves.
When you think about, even when we talk about rape, you know, the what was she wearing?
Oh, yeah.
Which is actually a defense. It's actually saying, no, it wasn't me. Somehow I was enticed. I was the victim. I was brought out. I was, you know, when Jordan Davis is I think about this all the time. When Jordan Davis was killed, they caught, and I'm forgetting his name. Michael Dunn on tape. And he says, I was the victim and the victor. It's like an actual question. That's how he defined himself. And so I think any time there's a power, you have to somehow show cause. You have to somehow show that you're not just, you know, doing what you're doing or participating in the system out of malice. And one way to do that is to say, we're actually the ones being discriminated against.
Mutual aid faces resource constraints. Mutual aid initiatives and community organizing efforts often operate with limited financial resource, volunteer support, and institutional backing. This can pose challenges in sustaining long-term projects, addressing systemic issues, and meeting the diverse needs of the community.
To understand anarchists' specific embrace of mutual aid, we will need to go back over 100 years to the writings of the famous Russian anarchist Peter Kropotkin, who, in addition to sporting one of the most prolific beards of all time, just so happened to be an accomplished zoologist and evolutionary biologist. Back in Kropotkin's day, the field of evolutionary biology was heavily dominated by the ideas of social Darwinists such as Thomas H. Huxley. By ruthlessly applying Charles Darwin's famous dictum, survival of the fittest, to human societies, Huxley and his peers had concluded that existing social hierarchies were the result of natural selection or competition between sovereign individuals and were thus an important and inevitable factor in human evolution. Not too surprisingly, these ideas were particularly popular among rich and politically powerful white men, as it provided them a pseudoscientific justification for their privileged positions in society, in addition to providing a racist rationalization of the European colonization of Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Kropotkin attacked this conventional wisdom when in 1902 he published a book called Mutual Aid, A Factor in Evolution, in which he proved that there was something beyond blind, individual competition at work in evolution. Kropotkin demonstrated that species that were able to work together, or who formed symbiotic arrangements with other species based on mutual benefit, were able to better adapt to their environment and were granted a competitive edge over those species who didn't or couldn't.
We can burn out and have problems with sustainability. Community organizers and volunteers may experience burnout due to the demanding nature of their work, limited resources, and the emotional toll of addressing complex social issues. It's important to prioritize self-care, establish boundaries, and build sustainable structures within organizations to prevent burnout and to promote long-term engagement.
One of the reasons why you get confused is because the capitalist system lets you think that you can think about something without being involved in that which you think about. Matter of fact, they let you think you're thinking. I see it all the time. You can even look at the television and watch a basketball game. People in the stands will criticize every basketball player. They've never been on the basketball court. Unless you played basketball, you cannot criticize any basketball player. It is clear, unless you're involved in that which you're thinking about, you can't think about it. None of you who have not taken physics cannot think about physics. Of course, you can think you think about it. But the only way you can think about physics is when you're studying physics, involved in physics. The only way you can think about mathematics is when you're involved in it. If you say you are for world peace and you think about world peace, but you do absolutely nothing for world peace, you're not thinking about world peace. You're just thinking you're thinking about world peace. So it is with the struggles of our people. I am sure that if I asked all of you, do you want our people struggle to advance? Every hand must go up. The truth is so powerful that even liars must spit it out. Of course. Every hand would go up. Oh, everybody wants the people to advance. Everybody wants us to get equality. Everybody wants terrorism to stop against us. Everybody wants racism to stop. Then you ask, how many are involved in the struggle to advance the people's cause? The hands will go down. But those who are not involved in the people's struggle, they still think that they think about the people's struggle. We must stop this for you. You must come to understand that the only way you can think about your people's struggle is when you are involved in your people's struggle. And if you're not involved in your people's struggle, don't fool yourself. Don't let capitalism let you think that you're thinking about your people. The capitalist system makes people stupid and then makes them arrogant in their stupidity. Not only do they not know, but they do not want to know. I've seen it everywhere. As a matter of fact, they take positions based on total ignorance. I told you I'm anti-capitalist, thus I'm a socialist. The other day, while I was just reading about socialism, my brother said, "Oh, Brother Kwame, you still talking about socialism?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, you know, I ain't no socialist. I'm a capitalist. You know, America's a capitalist system, and it's the greatest country in the world." Well, you know the line. I don't have to tell it to you. And he said he was for capitalism. I asked the brother one simple question. "Bro, how much capital you got in the bank?" Just a simple question. He was unemployed. Well, you know what Malcolm said. The slave will work harder to put out the master's house when it's on fire than the master himself. They don't even know what capitalism is and don't know what socialism is, but they take strong positions. Strongly, I'm against socialism. What is that? I'm against it. If you say you love your people, then you want to know everything there is to know about your people. Do you know that if a little brother on this campus happens to be your boyfriend and he says he likes you, he wants to know everything about you? Who are you going with before me? What'd you all do? How'd you all do it? Everything. Now, if you say you like a woman and you want to find out everything about one woman, and you say you love your people and you don't want to find out anything about your people, you're lying. You see, the capitalist system makes them lazy about every aspect of their life. That's why it must be struggled against without pity and without mercy. They will make you so confused if you're not struggling. People will really think that they're advancing the cause when they're not doing anything at all for the cause. If one is not involved in activity, one cannot think about that which one thinks one is thinking about. We want to make that clear. We want to make that crystal clear.
We are humans. There can be lack of coordination and collaboration. Fragmentation and lack of coordination along mutual aid groups and community organizations can lead to duplication of effort, competition for resources, and inefficiencies in addressing community needs. Building networks of collaboration, sharing resources, and fostering solidarity amongst different groups can help address those challenges.
Seattle Solidarity Network is an all-volunteer network of working people who defend ourselves against abuses from the rich and powerful through collective action and mutual support.
What we're doing and what we're trying to do at the Seattle Solidarity Network is create a network of people supporting each other.
That means we rely very heavily on direct action because we're not interested in using professionals because we want regular people to do it for themselves.
We're really based on the idea of people just coming together and supporting each other as equals in whatever our struggles may be.
We focus on actions that anyone can take, anyone can be taught to take, because this builds people power. It builds practical knowledge by involving people in the struggle and also builds confidence as we win more and more gains for ourselves.
We started Seattle Solidarity Network because we needed to start a concrete fight which directly related to people's lives and to our own lives and to our own problems that we have with our own employers and landlords.
It's a new take on a classic method of organizing. People getting together and going to confront their boss or their landlord is old. You know, that's as old as bosses or landlords, right? What we're trying to do by taking people from different workplaces and different housing and going together, that's the thing that we think is new about this.
We wanted to find strategies and tactics that ordinary people could get together and do for themselves rather than having to depend on lawyers or politicians or government agencies and so on.
Strategically, what we do is we create a sustained series of actions targeting a particular boss or landlord designed to hurt them and to keep the hurt on until they give in.
We try to come up with as many tactics as possible, things that a group of people can do collectively which will hurt the boss or the landlord, either embarrass them, hurt their reputation, or just aggravate them or whatever. Usually cost them money. We want to make it cost them more and more as time goes on and they still don't give in. So we never bluff. Like, if we say we'll take further action unless you give in, we will.
We really want to win. So we specifically work to make demands that we think are winnable. We'll start with an initial demand delivery and try and have a show of force to the boss or the landlord, whoever it is, that more people are paying attention than just this one worker, this one tenant.
We're not a social service. We're not someone who, you call and we help to take care of this for you. When someone comes to us, we have an expectation that they join us, and if my landlord steals my deposit, they're going to come help me fight my landlord, and in the same way, I'm going to help them fight their boss.
I didn't know what to do. I was walking home, and the poster was right there. I said, oh, I'm going to give these guys a call, see what happens.
I said, well, I've had a problem finding an attorney. Let me call these guys and see what they can do for me. And that's exactly what I did. And it's been positive ever since.
Yes, COINTELPRO is still possible. Co-option of external forces is still possible. Mutual aid initiatives and community organizing efforts may face co-optation by external forces such as government agencies, corporations, or mainstream institutions, which may seek to control or dilute the radical potential of grassroots movements. Maintaining autonomy, transparency, and a commitment to grassroots decision-making is essential in resisting co-optation. COINTELPRO and infiltration are valid criticisms and fears to have, but to assume that that would happen after getting involved with a coffee date with one person is the issue that myself and other older organizers had. A great way to avoid co-opting from external forces is to continue checking and pressing individuals on their harmful ideas and beliefs. The term SJW became derogatory around 10 years ago, and as an autistic person who takes words seriously, what's so wrong about being a warrior for social justice? The people who make being an advocate for others a hysterical notion are the first people you should question. They want to be hidden by that, you know what I mean? The misogynists, the transphobes, the bigots, ones that you don't necessarily jive with all the way. They are the ones who are the easiest to confront and manipulate in these movements. Domestic abusers and misogynists are the informants.
The leader of the American Indian movement was rife with informants. It is suspected that informants were also largely responsible for the downfall of the Black Panther Party, and the same can be surmised about the anti-war movements of the 1960s and 70s. Not surprisingly, these movements that were toppled by informants and provocateurs were also sites where women and queer activists often experience intense gender violence.
Maybe it isn't that informants are difficult to spot, but rather that we have collectively ignored the signs that give them away. To save our movements, we need to come to terms with the connections between gender violence, male privilege, and the strategies that informants and the people who just act like them use to destabilize radical movements. Time and again, heterosexual men in radical movements have been allowed to assert their privilege and subordinate others. Despite all that we say to the contrary, the fact is that radical social movements and organizations in the United States have refused to seriously address gender violence.
Keeping a no-tolerance mindset around this behavior allows those folks to not make ground in your movement. You cannot give an inch to bigotry because you are letting them know that they are safe in your spaces. If you have a no-tolerance approach to oppression and bigotry in this way, you can find the skeptical people sooner and deal with them. If you go around saying, I don't fuck with that Nazi shit, and you have one person being like, maybe, you kick them out because they probably fuck with the Nazi shit. It's really easy, I promise.
I'm gonna start it off slow. I'm gonna scope the scenery out. Watch out. Look, you don't know when I'm coming. Dummy.
You can get discouraged. While mutual aid and community organizing can address immediate needs and provide essential support to marginalized communities, they may struggle to achieve broader structural change and address root causes to systemic injustices. Combating structural inequality requires strategic alliances, advocacy efforts, and sustained organizing for systemic change. However, it is important to stay motivated and connected to your community throughout this process.
So 6 new this morning, Food Not Bombs can now serve Houston's homeless without the risk of getting ticketed. Now, this was not always the case. This comes after a court order yesterday. Our Ugochi Iloka spent hours combing through those court documents. Ugochi, what else do these documents say?
Kimberly, while a judge has ordered Houston city officials to stop fining Food Not Bombs for feeding the homeless, court documents also show that the nonprofit has to pay up. The ruling states Food Not Bombs must pay a bond of $25,000. The bond will be lowered to $2,500 if the group provides trash, storing materials, and hand sanitizing stations. Then the order states the group has to ensure people don't block the street and sidewalk during meals when those meals are being served. Now, those members who serve food must also take a food safety training session. The group has provided free meals outside of Central Library in downtown Houston for nearly 20 years. After changes were made to the ordinance last year, they've been ticketed about 100 times.
Activists experience burnout and fatigue often, and if we are aware of the impact we are making on the day-to-day in our communities, we are less likely to give up. Despite these challenges, mutual aid and community organizing remain powerful tools for grassroots mobilization, collective action, and social transformation. By addressing these problems and working collaboratively to build resilient communities, organizers and activists can continue to make meaningful contributions outside of the internet.
When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes, some of us will probably catch it on TV with chicken hanging from our mouths. You'll know it's revolution because there won't be no commercial.
At first, when I saw the arguing, I was frustrated because it felt like people were being dismissive before even trying. And then I realized that many of you have never organized, participated, or done anything like this before in your lives. And most of you are talking and asking out of the fear and anxiety of the unknown.
If you wait till you're good before you start, you ain't ever starting nothing. Like, you have to suck at something. And you have to get over the fact that you suck, or you'll never learn anything new.
As a mutual aid activist, it is important to prioritize safety and well-being while engaging in community organizing and direct action. Build trusting relationships with fellow activists and community members. Working in solidarity and mutual support can enhance safety and reduce risks. It helps with keeping track of details, holding space for accountability, and mitigating red flags. During the COINTELPRO operation, the feds and informants infiltrated movements like the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords because they entered at a time of extreme mistrust for those organizations. Folks were already accusing each other of being feds and kicking out those they did not trust, which unfortunately led to untrustworthy people remaining.
Take your time! Your time. Bake, melt, mold, become, arrive.
You also have to know your rights. Educate yourself about your legal rights as an activist, including the right to protest, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. Familiarize yourself with your local laws, as they do vary. Regulations regarding demonstrations and public gatherings. Stay informed about potential risks, threats, and developments in your community in broader social and political context. Monitor news sources, social media, and activist networks for relevant information and update. Before participating in any mutual aid activities or protests, assess potential risks and plan ahead. Consider factors such as the presence of law enforcement, counter-protesters, or other security concerns, and develop strategies to mitigate risks and ensure safety.
Is there any situation where you think it's okay to talk to the police?
Yeah, definitely. Say hello, how you feel, everything all right, period.
There's plenty of mutual aid networks that have folks volunteering as security or helping support folks in case of self-defense. We can protect ourselves and each other, especially with preparation. There are some mutual aid organizations I've seen that teach gunshot wound care, basic gun safety support, MMA for self-defense, etc.
My name is Paula Lamont. I'm the co-founder of Soulstar, which is a left-wing anti-fascist boxing club based in London.
And I'm Ella Gilbert. I'm the boxing coach and the other co-founder of Soulstar. I guess Soulstar is just a left-wing martial arts gym from a kind of a complete cross-section. So people from all different groups with different political backgrounds and different political flavours, as long as they're left-wing and subscribe to our ideals of anti-fascism and inclusion and all that kind of stuff. We live in a horrible world in some regards, especially as a woman. Like, the amount of street violence that you get, especially on the left, if you're on demonstrations, sometimes things can turn pretty nasty and you want to be able to defend yourself, and it's quite scary being in a situation like that where you feel like you don't know what to do.
We'll teach you to hit people, but actually more importantly, we'll teach you to get hit. Because I've seen people in demonstration situations or conflict situations where they go to bits.
And it's the first time they've ever been hit and they don't know what to do.
Before anyone joins the main class, we have an intro class. Then we'll explain who we are and what our principles are, and we get them to sign that and say, I agree. And actually, it's about decency, it's about behaving in a decent way.
We all have a socialist outlook, we're all left-wing, we're all anti-fascist, we're all feminist. That's enough.
Establish communication protocols with fellow activists and organizers to stay connected and informed during events and action. Whether you use Google, Coffee Revolution, or something else, the ultimate goal is to unplug and to connect in person, both for safety and for community. Stay together and look out for each other. Look out for each other, especially in situations where safety may be compromised. Set up safety protocols with each other.
We get a lot of accusations that we're doing this for kicks, that we're doing this because we're violent teens who just want to see violence happen.
I consider myself to be someone who's very fed up with seeing protests that accomplish nothing.
I did a lot of marching and holding signs and yelling in the street and getting permits, and it didn't really feel like I was doing enough.
I was aware that, obviously there's plenty of racists in the country, but I didn't realize that they were organized and political and actively out to cause violence.
Seeing the state of the world and seeing the news and seeing what's going on, seeing how much danger people were in, made me want to get involved.
The term Antifa is short for anti-fascist, and as many people know, anti-fascism dates back to fascism. So we can see anti-fascists battling Mussolini's black shirts in Italy, standing up to Hitler's Nazis. And today, a lot of anti-fascists draw from the European tradition. And really, it's at the front lines of physically confronting fascist and white supremacist organizing in the United States today.
There is no one organization called the Black Bloc. It's dozens, hundreds, thousands of autonomous organizations all across the country and all across the world. Black Bloc or bloc is just what we wear. It's entirely black, simple, non-identifying clothing. You don't want to get identified by Nazis, or they're going to try and show up to your house, try and contact your employer, beat you up on the street if they get the chance. So it's important they can't find out who you are. But it's also important that if you're doing something illegal, if you're trying to punch a Nazi, then you don't want police to be able to identify you, and you don't want police to be able to tell you apart. Street violence is actually one of the last resorts for anti-fascists.
We can help support ourselves and each other from dangerous, bad faith actors. Ultimately, this is the most important skill as far as it comes to safety and surveillance, is trust your instincts. Trust your instincts and intuition when assessing situations and making decisions about your safety. If you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, remove yourself from the situation and seek support from trusted allies and organizations. If you show up to a Coffee Revolution meeting and folks give you bad feelings internally, I'd rather you leave and have regrets than stay and have worse regrets. Your gut instinct is there for a reason, and you can and should rely on it when all else fails. Remember that safety is a collective responsibility, and by working together and supporting one another, mutual aid activists can create safer and more resilient communities. All of these things can be worked through. It's the biggest point, the biggest takeaway that I want everybody to take from this video, that whatever you're facing, someone has faced it before, and you can also break through from it. Someone older than you has dealt with it before. Either you can talk to them in person, online, or through them documenting their work through a book. Before you can serve your community, you must trust them. You must trust that most people are doing things in good faith. If they are not, you must trust that you and the others in your community are capable of handling the situation. You must trust in yourself that you are capable of doing it. I wanted to wrap up this video talking about my journey with mutual aid over the years. I graduated high school in 2009 at 17. This was the year of Occupy Wall Street. It was a completely new and motivating experience to see people at the time all expressing their discomfort and frustration around income inequality. Over the summer, before Occupy Wall Street got evicted, I spent my summer amongst the people. This is where I first saw that there were dozens of organizations and plenty of people with agendas. Without discernment, it can be easy to get swept up into a leftist cult situation or exploited in some way. After that summer, I went to Chicago for art school. I was too broke to to finish, so I had to drop out. But I wanted to stay in the Midwest, so I did. I ended up dating someone in Milwaukee and moving there with him, and that's where I first got involved with mutual aid on a more extensive level. I volunteered weekly at the local food co-op, which allowed me to get discounted vegan food and access to the local community. Milwaukee at the time had their own version of Occupy Wall Street called Occupy the Hood, which I participated in through meetings, protests, and mutual aid. My boyfriend and I broke up, and I ended up working with the Catholic Workers House in Milwaukee called Casa Maria, where we gave free housing to women and children. Casa Maria was one of the most transformative moments in my life that I still think about all the time. In exchange for 30 hours a week volunteering, I was able to receive free room and board and food. We had a community garden in the backyard with fresh produce. The basement and garage acted as a free store where they could get toiletries and clothing, no questions asked. The housing was temporary and to help women and children to get into long-term housing on their own, as well as help them apply for support like subsidized housing, food stamps, and the like. Once they were ready to leave, the garage was a free store for furniture and household items that they were allowed to take and help them move forward. That experience radicalized me forever. I was there for under a year, but I've been looking for something like this ever since. From there, I've been active in info shops, food not bombs, and community fridges the most, as well as crowdfunding for mutual aid fund. I've been marching since 2009 when Oscar Grant passed away, and I thought it was something that I should do, be on the ground and show face. I've been to too many protests where people fall over the microphone, where people came up and spread their organization's agenda, where bigotry was spewed. I found that my energy and time is more valuable when I'm participating in direct action outside of being a body at a protest. You don't have to be in the front with a bullhorn to make a difference. In a mutual aid network, everyone and their abilities matter. We need people to make the posts, to email, to spread the news, to organize, to pick up supplies, to organize supplies, to distribute, etc. Not everyone needs to be up front. Not everyone can be.
Every role ain't for everybody.
Yeah.
If you feel like, hey, that's good for you, and you don't feel called to the front line to go and protest, that is 100% fine.
That's cool. Say that again one more time.
It is 100% fine.
I've lived in a few housing co-ops as well, and one of my favorite quotes I learned in my experience with one of them was that everybody wants a revolution, but nobody wants to do the dishes. Acts of love, courage, and justice don't just reach the spotlight usually. As I mentioned in the TikTok I made, everyone knows Huey P. Newton, but no one remembers the 80% of the nameless majority women who ran the free clinics, free breakfast program, free daycare. Being an activist might not always catch attention or go viral. The revolution will not be televised, it will be live. These acts of love, courage, and justice will draw us all together as a community. More than ever, we need to reach out to each other, help each other, and support one another. We must bear witness of humanity as well as inhumanity, so we can say no more. We can stand up and say that we did not comply or agree. We can remove our frustrations towards each other and turn that into action. We can stop being so worried about Trump and Biden and know that we got our own backs regardless. That we will be here before, during, and after them. Somebody's gotta do the fucking dishes. Peace.
Something that you see and all of a sudden you realize I'm on the wrong page.